All right. Hello, everyone. I hope this is working. This is the second time I've had audio issues when I've made my videos here. I'm going to test and make sure this is working before we go any further. Give me one moment, please. I need to make sure this is actually working. Let's see. Yay, it's working. Good. Fantastic. Welcome to episode number 59 of Azren's Journal. If you're new to the segment, it's pretty straightforward. This is the segment on my channel where I share my personal language learning journey, and of course, give you guys a whole bunch of different language learning tips. This is episode number 59. As I said, it's the second time I'm recording this because we got some weird audio issues partway through the previous episode. But hopefully this time around it works well. I think I figured out what the problem is. There's like an audio setting in these YouTube videos, and I think when I unplug or replug my headphones, it messes up some of those audio settings. So I'm going to make sure I don't do that this time. So I have a lot of stuff to share. I'm going to skip some of the initial intro stuff I did the first time to save on time. And we're just going to dive directly into our two topics of the day. We have one topic, which is a tip to improve your listening comprehension. And then we have a second topic, which is a tip to improve your actual speaking ability. And I think both of these are going to be very useful for the people listening. The listening tip is one that I gave on my podcast today. So if you're not listening to my podcast, link is in the description below. It is called the Language Learning Show. I think it's a really good podcast. It's actually way more popular than, it's probably one of my most popular pieces of content that get put out. People, it's got the biggest audience by far on my podcast. So if you're not listening to that, give that a listen. And so it is something we talked about on the podcast. And the speaking tip is something that I'm not sure if I've talked about it very often, but we'll talk about it today. So for listening, this morning, as I have for the past couple of weeks, I was doing some exercise. I've been very consistent with that for the past month, give or take, where I exercise every single morning, which is fantastic. I'm very proud of myself for that. And while I was exercising, I was watching a video in Mandarin. Now, this Mandarin had English subtitles along with the Mandarin subtitles underneath. So there's both. And I was finding it quite difficult. It was pretty challenging. There was a lot of stuff that I wasn't understanding. There's a lot of stuff that was being said too fast. There were parts where even though I understood the words or I knew the words when I looked at the subtitles, my brain wasn't registering those words when I heard them. And overall, I was probably understanding less than 50% of this particular video. And it was pretty challenging. Probably, 50 to 60% of the video was going over my head, and it was really, really tough. But then for some reason, I decided to try something that I've never done before, and it was extremely effective for me. I decided to pretend that the people in the video, I decided to pretend that they were directly in front of me and that they were speaking directly to me. I decided to pretend that that's what they were doing. And that changed for some reason. That totally improved my overall listening comprehension. I would predict that, or I would calculate roughly that my listening comprehension of the video improved by about, let's say, 10 to 20%. Which is pretty significant when you think about it. 10 to 20% more is a very significant improvement, especially when it was just a mentality shift. I didn't study to improve that comprehension. I literally just thought to myself, let's pretend the person is directly in front of me and they're talking directly to me and they are expecting me to reply to what they are saying. And suddenly I was understanding a lot, a good noticeable amount more than I was before. I don't know if this works all the time. I don't know if this will work for every language, for every person, for every level of fluency. I just don't know. But I do believe it's worth trying. My initial hypothesis, my initial thinking is that this type of listening strategy is best for people who have, let's say, an intermediate level, kind of like my Mandarin. I think for beginners, you will see limited results. And for advanced speakers, I don't know if it's necessarily the best strategy in the world. Maybe it is. I literally do not know. It's worth trying, though. I think it's worth trying. I see some people in the chat from France and Russia. Hello, hello, hello. I hope you are doing very, very well. I want to change topics, and I want to go into the second piece of advice in this video, which is more on the speaking side of things, the speaking production, the speaking element of learning another language. An activity I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, I've been doing it minimally once to twice a week for approximately half an hour to an hour, and it's been very useful. It has been the essentially, I have been practicing thinking in my target language. So, for example, today, literally, I woke up and I woke up in the morning, I was going to my Chinese class, my Mandarin class, and I decided I'm going to basically force myself to think in Mandarin all the way from me showering, getting ready, all the way to the end of my Mandarin class. So it's basically like a 2-hour window where it was pure Mandarin thinking. That's what I told myself that I was going to do. Okay? And it was hard. It was really challenging. There were words I wanted, there were thoughts I wanted to think, but they were really hard because I didn't have the vocabulary. My thoughts were slower in many ways, but it was an effective activity. And I found myself feeling way more, for lack of a better term, way more like a native speaker. I felt myself feeling as if I was Chinese or Taiwanese or something like that. I felt that inside of me. I could feel that difference. The only comparable experience I could compare it to is anytime I travel abroad. When I have traveled to France or to India or to China or to wherever, to Peru, places where I went and I lived there for an extended period of time, it felt very similar to when I was in those countries. Because when I was in those countries, people around me generally did not speak English. They only spoke the target language. All of my surroundings were not in English. They were in the target language. When I would look at out the window, for example, I look out the window, or even this window here, I look out the window, everything is in the target language. The television is in target, like everything around me is not in English. And every day I'm only communicating in the target language. So that forces you to consistently be stuck, quote unquote, stuck in the target language for days and days and hours and months on end. And that leads to a rapid amount of progress. And when I was forcing myself this morning to think in Mandarin and not in English, it was I felt very similarly in my body, in my brain and in my body. I felt the same chemicals and same neurons and blah, blah, blah firing. I felt it. And I realized that, it led to a new hypothesis, to be honest. It made me wonder that if someone hypothetically decided that for a 2-month window, they only think in their target language. For 2 months or 1 month, they think in their target language only, or 80% in their target language. What would happen? I think there's an argument to be made where that type of exercise would lead you to, would have a similar result as being immersed in another country. Similar. I really think so. And I think it's something I was thinking today, maybe one day I'm going to do a challenge or something where I pick a 2-week, a 1-week, a 3-week window where it's like, hey, in this 3 weeks, we think in our target language. I don't care where you live, you think in your target language. If you don't know how to think something, you don't think that thought. You go, I don't know how to process that. And you don't. You move on. Or you look it up in a dictionary, on your phone, you ask someone, but if you don't know how, you move on because you can't, right? Or you find another alternative, and I think that's a good practice. I think that's a effective practice that really helps you in that expressive kind of ability in the language, even though you're not actually talking. There's one person in particular, there's actually a couple, but one who really comes to mind right now, a previous student of mine. And this individual had done exactly that. They never spoken to anybody was it French? Yeah, French student. This French student had never actually spoken to people in French. They'd only listened to things on YouTube and blah, 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 right? They had done a lot of listening. And then they would talk to themselves literally in their mind. They'd be like, hi, bonjour. Ah, bonjour, ça va bien? Oh, oui, ça va bien. Oh, je suis stressé aujourd'hui. I'm stressed today. And they would just process in their mind in French. And I could not believe how strong they were in French when I first met them. I was like, what? You've never spoken to someone in French before? I can't believe it. Your French is super strong. So it's something I highly recommend. I think that can really help everybody listening to this episode here. For the last couple of minutes, I want to go into some personal topics, some personal things going on in my world. This is going to go more in the businessy side, more in some personal sides, things like that. I always like to share those things and keep you guys in the loop. It's always something that feels intuitively right to be doing. So the first thing is around physical exercise and fitness. So as you guys know, since 2016, roughly middle of 2016, I've been focusing on my health, my fitness, becoming healthier. And man, I got to tell you, I'm really proud of myself right now. I am more active than I've ever been in my adult life, which is like high five to myself. I'm really happy. I'm super excited. 5 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week. I'm doing exercise every morning. I'm stretching every day. Like, that's amazing. I'm really proud of myself. And it's just been a testament, literally, and actually this will go into language learning too. I think this is proof that moving slowly but surely, one little step at a time, adds up over the years. I think there's a real argument to be made to try and create, when you're struggling to create change in your languages, in your personal life, when there's a real struggle and you're having a hard time, focusing on incremental change in the big picture is a good idea. For fitness, I've never wanted to exercise. I mean, in my adult life, I've not wanted to exercise. I've not wanted to eat well. These types of things are not things I wanted to do. It was really hard for me, really tough. And the only thing that worked for me was in 2016, I decided in the spring, I need to be consistently moving forward with my health. I need to consistently be getting better with my health. I need to be consistently getting healthier, slowly, little steps at a time. I started with sleep and nutrition, and I wasn't even like doing amazing things. I just aimed to be better. I then, like a while later, incorporated some physical activity. Sometimes I wasn't very active. Sometimes I would be less active. Sometimes I'm more active. But overall, today, on February 26, 2020, I'm in better health than I've ever been in my adult life. I don't overeat anymore. I sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, depends on the night. I drink way more water. Nowadays, I'm doing daily exercise and I'm stretching every day. Mind you, the actual physical exercise portion, I'm pretty standard at like 15 minutes a day. It's not actually fantastic, but it's a hell of a lot better than I ever was doing during my adult life. That's amazing. On top of that, I go out of my way to like go for walks. Like, I'll park far away from things so I can walk more. Like, I do other things like that. That's amazing. I'm super happy with myself. And I'm going to keep chipping away, guys. I'm going to keep chipping away. Slowly, one step, half step, little by little. And when you compare myself to, let's say, early 2016, where I was sleeping 5 hours a night, five and a half, I was eating only carbs, sugars, overeating. I was not eating vegetables, not eating protein. Like, it was just a bad situation. I was very, very stressed at a high stress job. Felt happy, but stressed, more stressed than now anyway. I was not physically active whatsoever. I was not drinking enough water. I was doing everything. I would like wake up and go immediately to work. Like, it'd be like, I'd wake up, oh, I have a call in 10 minutes, go to my call. Like, it was not good. And compared to that, I'm in a completely brand different place whatsoever. Completely different place. Another personal update. This is kind of work and personal related as well. So business-wise, right? Like business and just my self-employment. I've said this before, and I actually encourage people to approach things this way. I think it's a good way to approach things. I treat my work life as an experiment. I really do. I don't know if I'm going to be successful in the long term in my current line of employment. For those of you who don't know what I do for work, I work for myself. I run what's called the Calgary Language Nerds. We teach a bunch of languages. And so far, it's going okay. It's going fine. But this is an 8-year, 9-year experiment. I want to see if I can get it to a point where I can sustain myself for the long term. Right now, it's going fine. It's good for my current expenses. It's good for my current lifestyle. But if things don't keep growing, eventually I'll have to stop. So yeah, and I think being in competition with yourself is a really good idea. I actually think, weirdly, I think comparing yourself to other people it can be a dangerous pathway to go down. When you're always comparing yourself to others, that's dangerous. It leads to self-esteem issues. It leads to you feeling inadequate. It can lead to some negative things. I think to an extent it can be good. Hello from Brazil, by the way, wisely kid. I think there is a positive aspect to comparing yourself to others. I think there can be. If your life is not in a good place, you need to compare yourself to others so you have a good role model of what you should be doing. And you can say, wow, that guy's or that girl is doing this. I'm doing all the wrong things in comparison. I need to change that. So comparing yourself to others as role models and having role models, I think is good. But too much of comparing yourself to others is a bad idea. Don't do it. I think you need to compare yourself to yourself. I think you need to look at where you were before, and you need to be always in competition with yourself. You need to look at where you were yesterday, and you need to look at where you want to be today. And can you always be in a battle? You always need to be fighting yourself to get better than yourself. And who cares? Like, close your ears. Close your ears and close your eyes. Doesn't matter what people are saying, good or bad. Doesn't matter what people are doing. Don't look at them. Close your eyes. Who cares what they're doing? Fingers in your ears. Doesn't matter what others are saying. You just need to look at yourself. Just look at your own stuff and work on your own stuff. And that's what I try and do in my work life and my personal too. I mentioned with exercise, right? I try. It's hard, not perfect. I mess it up all the time. All the time. And actually in certain ways, I actually sometimes need the outside opinions because I know myself, and without outside opinions, I can get in a weird zone where I'm happy with stuff that's actually not good for me. So I sometimes need some outside perspective. I'm aware of that. But generally speaking, man, I think that's a really healthy way to view things. Some challenges and really hard stuff I'm working through right now, just pure openness. I think maybe this can bring some people value too. Some hard things I'm working through in my world. So work-wise, I've got some fear at the moment. Not fear, but something it's in my calendar to look at. We've got some classes that are going to be wrapping up soon in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And I need to replace those classes for my teachers. They need either to have new people in those slots, or the people that they're having classes with now, I would like them to renew so that they can continue, so that my teachers can continue to have work. That's important. That's a small concern of mine. There's a lot of stuff in my work life I'm not getting to right now, which is very frustrating. So I'm not adding to the free classes on the YouTube channel that we have here. I'm not updating those as regularly as I'd like. I'm not doing enough to be growing the brand here in Calgary, in the Calgary Language Nerds. There's not enough stuff that I'm doing to be proactive to grow the brand. That's a problem that has to be fixed. We have there are some attendance problems. So one of our drop-in classes, the attendance is not very good. And overall, I need to be changing my strategy for basically Mandarin learners in Calgary. The strategy has to change. I need to adjust it to build a good community around that. There's some issues there. I also have noticed we need to continue expanding. We need to continue expanding our drop-in classes, our free classes. I'm not doing enough on that front. So there's some challenges. There's some challenges there. I've messed up my schedule for Sundays, which is I predict might bite me in the butt. I'm not sure how that's gonna look. We're gonna see how that plays out, but I'm not sure how I'm feeling about my Sundays right now. So every second Sunday, I've got a real issue. They're busy. I keep Sundays to myself, but I've got every second Sunday is freaking booked. Like from 11 a.m. to freaking 9:30 p.m. That's not what I want, but I've made a decision that has put me in that spot. So that might be a problem. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of stuff personally. There's some stuff we're dealing with. So I've got a younger sister, but I'm also her guardian. Well, rather alternate guardian to be precise. She's disabled, and like just a real challenge we're working through right now is her day programmings. Like my sister is really unhappy with some of her day programmings, and we got to work through some of that. And we don't know if in certain ways she's spoiled. We don't know if in certain ways we have to do like look at her behavior and start correcting some of the behavior. We don't, yeah, there's some challenges we're having. Call it parenting issues, I suppose. Some parenting challenges. If there's parents out there, you might be able to relate in certain ways, which is really difficult in many ways, really, really hard. For anyone who is a parent, you can probably relate in the sense that it's different when you're a parent. I'm not a parent, but there's a certain similarity between my sister's relationship to me than a parent to their child. There's similar factors there, I believe. So not exactly the same. It is nowhere close to the same relationship, but there's similarities. And you know, if you are a parent, one thing you can probably relate to is that you don't have full control. You can't control your child's actions. You control your actions, you control your parenting, you control your rules, you control how you treat the child, you can control a lot, but the child is their own person. And if you think back to when you didn't have kids, you know, you were only worried about your life. You only thought about you. And you're in full control of you, right? You want to be healthier? You're in full control. You want your child to be healthier? You have a good amount of control, but not full control. That child could rebel. They could cause issues. And maybe you can force them into it. You can blah, 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 but it's a different game. It's a different game. And it's a harder game for me than it is my work. My work and my personal life is super easy. I want to be healthier. I go be healthier. No problem. I can figure it out. I need more sales. I can figure it out. I can problem solve it. I can figure out what to do. I'm in full control. If I can't figure it out, I'll change jobs. I'm a skilled guy. I'm a smart guy. I can get another job, right? If I get health problem, you deal with it. It's me. It's egocentric, right? It's Azren centered. I'm in full control. But when it's someone else, you're not in full control anymore, and that's harder. It's much harder. So, and it's a forever thing. Like my sister, and it's even actually different than kids. And I have a different relationship with my sister than parents have with their kids. Because parents with their kids, you're gonna die. You're gonna die well before your child dies, most likely, right? You might die at 70 and your child is 40 or 80 and they're 50. So the child is gonna have to deal with your death. Now, with my sister, we're like 3 years apart. I'm gonna have that responsibility till I die, essentially, or till like when she dies, I'm gonna die around the same time, most likely. Or when I die, she's gonna die right around the same. Like we're probably gonna live roughly the same age. We're both in decent health, good health, blah blah blah. So I've got that responsibility for a long time. I got that responsibility for another. I'm what, 28, 27? I've got another at least 50, 60, 70, 80 years. So it's a real decision, man. It's a real decision. Having a kid is a big responsibility. Holy man, having kids, don't do that lightly. Don't do that lightly, man. Think about that. Think about that decision before you make that decision. It's a big decision. It's a big responsibility. I don't have a kid, but I know I can taste it. I know the flavor of it. And having a kid's even a different level, man. Different level. Anyway, I got to go, guys. It's 3:21. I've got some stuff I got to do. This went on much longer than I expected. So thanks for listening. Appreciate your watching, rather. Appreciate your attention, as always. And oops. And we'll chat later. Bye. See you. End video.